greatest story.
The Velvet Room, a 5-star restaurant located in an upscale district of the city. The atmosphere is luxurious, with classic decor, soft lighting, and elegant tables set with fine china. A live pianist plays gentle background music. The restaurant attracts the city's elite, but some of its staff still hold outdated views on class and race. Claire Johnson, a confident, accomplished black woman in her early 30s. She's a successful investor with major holdings in real estate and tech, dressed in a sleek, professional black dress with subtle jewelry. Despite her success, she is often treated with prejudice in high society environments. Kevin Miller, a young, white server at the Velvet Room. He harbors biases against people of color and poor people, believing that they don't belong in a luxury restaurant. Laura Williams, the restaurant's manager, an older woman who is generally neutral but feels pressured to maintain the restaurant's exclusive image and cater to the elite customers. Thomas, a wealthy, white customer dining near Claire. He quietly looks at her with disdain and makes passive-aggressive comments about her presence. The Velvet Room, a renowned 5-star restaurant, known for its exclusivity and the sophisticated air it exudes. The atmosphere is filled with the gentle sound of classical music, the glint of crystal chandeliers, and the scent of fine wine and gourmet dishes. As Claire Johnson enters, dressed in a sleek, black dress, the restaurant's luxurious ambience feels like an unspoken statement about wealth and class. But it's not just the guests who make this place elitist, it's also the staff. As Claire steps into the restaurant, she walks with grace and purpose, her steps firm but not hurried. The staff, dressed in immaculate uniforms, stand at attention, but the moment they notice Claire's entrance, there's a subtle shift in their behavior. They exchange quick glances, their eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Their focus shifts from professional to judgmental as they glance at each other. Kevin, a young white server with a chip on his shoulder, stands near the bar, watching Claire as she walks in. His eyes follow her from head to toe, and a small, condescending smirk appears on his lips. His thoughts are clear, but they're not meant to be spoken out loud, yet. Kevin, whispering under his breath to his colleague, his voice dripping with disdain, "Great, another one. I swear, the place is turning into a zoo. They think they can just waltz in here, like they belong in a place like this." His colleague, Sarah, rolls her eyes and leans in closer, as if they're in some kind of secret club. Sarah, quietly, with a hint of sarcasm, "Yeah, she's definitely not our usual crowd. I don't know why they even let people like her in here." The two exchange knowing glances, and their whispered comments hang in the air for a moment before they go back to their duties, keeping a careful eye on Claire. Claire walks toward the hostess stand, not noticing the whispers or the judgmental stares. She's used to this kind of treatment, but it never makes it any easier. She walks with the confidence of someone who has built her own empire, even in a world where her skin color makes her an outsider. Her heels click sharply against the polished marble floors as she approaches the hostess. Hostess, smiling politely but with a hint of coldness, glancing at the reservation list quickly, "Good evening. Welcome to the Velvet Room. How may I assist you?" Claire, with a soft but confident smile, "I have a reservation under Claire Johnson." The hostess's smile falters for just a moment, as if surprised by the name, but she quickly recovers and gestures toward Kevin, signaling him to escort Claire to her table. It's a subtle but telling moment. The hostess doesn't directly acknowledge Claire's presence, as if she's unsure how to deal with her. Hostess, with the same fake warmth, a bit too polite, "Right this way, Ms. Johnson. Kevin will take care of you." Kevin looks at Claire as she steps forward. His fake smile is plastered on, but there's a subtle sneer in his eyes. He gestures for her to follow him but doesn't wait for her to catch up. He's visibly annoyed, walking ahead of her with a pace that's just a little too quick. As Claire follows him, she can feel the temperature shift around her. Every employee seems to watch her a little too closely, their glances sharp with judgment, and Claire picks up on every single one. She's walked this path before, but the bitterness of it stings every time. Kevin, not looking at Claire, his voice flat and cold as he leads her to a distant corner of the restaurant, "We have a nice table for you right here. Don't mind the view. It's quieter." He stops at a table far from the main dining area, tucked away in a shadowed corner of the restaurant, away from the bustling center where the wealthier guests sit. He pulls out a chair for Claire with exaggerated politeness, but his eyes betray the condescension in his gestures. Claire sits down, still calm, but there's a quiet simmer of frustration within her. "Claire," softly but with a firm voice, as she takes a seat, "I'd prefer a better table, one with a view. I'd like to sit where the atmosphere matches the price I'm paying." Kevin's smirk falters for a second. He's caught off guard by her assertiveness, but he quickly recovers and leans in with a fake smile, trying to cover his discomfort. "Kevin," with a sarcastic edge, "Oh, I see. You want to sit where the important people sit. Well, I guess this corner will have to do for now. But hey, the view of the kitchen is just as good, right?" Claire doesn't flinch. She looks up at him, meeting his gaze. There's a flicker of something, power, perhaps, in her eyes. "Claire," coolly, "I don't need your pity, Kevin. I need respect. And I expect it here, just as I would anywhere else." Kevin's eyes narrow slightly, his smirk faltering. He's uncomfortable now, but he's still determined to keep up his air of superiority. He turns and walks away, muttering to himself under his breath, but Claire can hear the remnants of his judgmental thoughts. Kevin, muttering, barely audible, "Yeah, sure. Like you belong in this world." Claire shakes her head slightly, but she's learned to let it go. She can handle this. It's just another day in a world that doesn't know how to deal with her success, but she knows that tonight won't end without a reckoning. Claire, as she sits at the corner table, her back straight, eyes focused on the menu in front of her. The tension in the air is palpable, the whispers from the staff around her not going unnoticed. Claire's sense of isolation, though not new to her, still stings, especially in a place like the Velvet Room, where wealth and status are on display as much as the food itself. As Claire reads the menu, Kevin returns, his steps slow and deliberate. He pauses at the table, his face tight with discomfort. Claire looks up, catching the slight hesitation in his posture. He stands there for a moment before speaking, his tone dripping with insincerity. "Kevin," with a forced smile, "can I get you anything else, Ms. Johnson? Maybe a better table? Or, do you prefer to stay out of sight?" The sarcasm in his voice is thick, and Claire can feel it. She doesn't react immediately, her gaze steady as she looks up at him, unfazed by his condescending tone. "Claire," calmly but firmly, "I'll take the table I requested, Kevin. And I'll be paying for this meal just like anyone else here, so I expect to be treated the same." Kevin chuckles softly, but there's no humor in his laugh. He stands a little taller, clearly enjoying the small power he believes he holds in this moment. "Kevin, oh, I'm sure you'll be paying just fine. But you know, money doesn't always mean you fit in. Some of us know how to move in places like this, not sure if you do." Claire's gaze sharpens. She knows exactly what he's implying. She doesn't flinch, though the weight of his words lingers in the air. She leans forward slightly, her voice lowering but carrying a sharp edge. "Claire, if you're implying that I don't belong here, Kevin, you're mistaken. I belong anywhere I choose to be. And it's not my job to make you feel comfortable with that." There's a long pause. Kevin's smirk falters just a little, the first sign of uncertainty creeping into his expression. Claire takes a breath, and just as she's about to speak again, Laura, the manager, walks toward them, her face tight with concern. "Laura," to Kevin, voice strained, "Kevin, what's going on here? Why are you causing a scene?" Kevin's expression shifts quickly to one of feigned innocence. He steps back slightly, his hands moving in exaggerated motions as he tries to deflect the situation. "Kevin, quickly, nothing, Laura. Just making sure our guest is comfortable, that's all." Claire, cutting in sharply, "I'm not sure Kevin understands what comfortable means. But I'm fine, thank you." Laura glances at Claire, her expression briefly flickering with uncertainty. She looks back at Kevin, then turns her attention fully to Claire. "Laura," in a forced, diplomatic tone, "I'm sorry if you've been treated poorly, Ms. Johnson. That's certainly not the experience we aim to provide. Let me move you to a better table." Claire stands up before Laura can offer her a new seat, her eyes narrowing with quiet intensity. "Claire," with cold resolve, "No, Laura. I don't want to be moved. I want respect. I want to be treated the same way everyone else here is, including the people who think it's okay to look down on me simply because of who I am." There's a heavy silence. The tension is so thick it's almost suffocating. Kevin shifts on his feet, suddenly feeling the weight of the situation. The restaurant, usually filled with the soft murmur of conversation, seems to hold its breath. Claire's words are sharp, cutting through the facade of politeness that has been put on display. Laura seems to soften, the truth of Claire's words starting to hit her. She knows there's a problem, but like many in positions of power, she's hesitant to confront it directly. "Laura," hesitantly, "I understand, and I do apologize. I'll speak to Kevin about the service." Before Claire can respond, Thomas, the wealthy guest sitting nearby, suddenly stands up. He walks over to Claire's table, his voice loud enough to make sure everyone around can hear. Thomas, mockingly, loud enough for the entire dining room to hear, "Oh, please. You really think you're on the same level as us? Just because you have some money doesn't mean you belong in a place like this. People like you aren't supposed to be in these types of places." The room falls silent, and all eyes turn to Claire. Kevin smirks, clearly pleased with Thomas's intervention, but Claire doesn't flinch. Her eyes stay steady, locking onto Thomas as if he's the only person in the room. Claire, voice steady, but her words cut through the tension like a knife, "I'm not here because I want to be accepted by you or anyone else. I'm here because I have every right to be. And if you can't handle that, then maybe you don't belong here." The words hang in the air like a storm, the silence growing thicker. The other guests at nearby tables glance nervously, unsure of how to react. Kevin's smirk fades, and even Laura looks like she's taken aback by Claire's confidence. Thomas opens his mouth to retort, but Claire cuts him off again. "Claire," firmly, "I don't need your approval, Thomas. Or anyone else's. And just because I don't fit your idea of what belongs in this restaurant, doesn't mean I don't deserve to be treated with respect." The room is completely still. Then, unexpectedly, Claire stands, looking directly at Kevin and Laura. "Claire," loud enough for everyone to hear, "I think I've made my point here. If anyone needs a lesson in respect, I suggest you start with your staff. As for me, I'm leaving. But make no mistake, this isn't over." She turns on her heel and walks toward the door, every step purposeful and deliberate. The staff watches her go, and even Thomas, still standing awkwardly at his table, doesn't say a word. As Claire exits, the murmurs start again, louder now. The air feels electric, charged with the aftershock of the confrontation. Kevin stands there, his hands trembling slightly as he realizes just how badly he miscalculated. Laura looks to him, her face hardening as she silently decides to address the issue that has just unfolded. The tension in the restaurant is palpable, but it's clear that Claire's actions have left an indelible mark. Not just on Kevin, but on everyone who witnessed the power of standing up for what's right, even in the face of such immense judgment. The Velvet Room, once a place of elegance and quiet sophistication, now felt like a battleground. The faint murmur of conversation had been replaced by a heavy silence, the aftermath of Claire's confrontation hanging in the air like a storm cloud. As Claire left the restaurant, her steps unwavering, the eyes of the patrons followed her. A few exchanged whispers, but none dared to speak openly about the tension that had just erupted. Claire's presence was powerful, but it was the impact of her words that lingered long after she had exited. Outside the restaurant, the city air felt different. Claire took a deep breath, the cool breeze brushing her face as she stepped into the streets. She wasn't angry, not anymore. She was resolute. Claire had known that tonight would not be easy. She had expected the resistance, the subtle judgment, the condescension. But what she didn't expect was the moment of clarity, the powerful shift that had come over her when she finally stood up to it. It wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had been made to feel inferior because of the way they looked, the money they had, or the color of their skin. It was time for change, and Claire knew she had started something tonight. As Claire walked away, her mind shifted from the confrontation to the bigger picture. She thought of her work, her investments, the causes she supported, and the lives she hoped to change. She was no longer just Claire Johnson, a successful businesswoman. She was now a symbol of resistance, a person who had, in that one moment, chosen to make the world around her uncomfortable, because change never comes from comfort. Back inside the restaurant, Kevin stood motionless. His smugness had disappeared, replaced by an uneasy realization. He had crossed a line. A line that, in his naivety, he thought was safe to step over. He hadn't expected Claire to stand her ground so firmly. He hadn't expected to be called out, and worse yet, he hadn't expected to be wrong. Laura, the manager, stood in the center of the room, her gaze piercing through the staff. Her face, usually a mask of professionalism, was now marked by the weight of the situation. She had witnessed everything, Claire's words, Kevin's blatant disrespect, and the uncomfortable truth that Claire had so effortlessly pointed out. The restaurant was supposed to be a sanctuary for the wealthy and influential, a space where only the worthy could dine. But tonight, Claire had turned that illusion on its head. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the unspoken truth of what had just transpired. Laura, usually quick to dismiss issues like these, was now grappling with the reality of what Claire had done, and it wasn't just about one customer's experience. It was about a system of exclusion, a system built on class and race, that had been allowed to thrive in places like the Velvet Room for far too long. Laura took a slow, measured breath before turning to Kevin. He was still standing by the bar, his hands clasped together, eyes wide, as though he had just come out of a trance. Laura, coldly, her voice firm, "Kevin, you need to understand something. This isn't just about one woman and her complaints. This is about how we treat people. You've crossed a line, and there are consequences for that." Kevin's face flushed with embarrassment, but there was something deeper, fear. Not of the reprimand, but of the truth that had been revealed. For the first time, he was forced to confront his own biases, and the reality that the world he had built in his head, one where privilege and race dictated worth, was not only morally wrong but dangerous. Kevin, defensively, trying to justify himself, "I didn't mean anything by it, Laura. It's just, we don't get many people like that here. You know how it is." Laura, cutting him off, her voice ice cold, "No, Kevin. I know how it is. And so do you, whether you want to admit it or not. You were rude, dismissive, and you humiliated that woman. And that, Kevin, is not acceptable. I've let things slide before, but not anymore." Kevin swallowed hard. He could feel his throat tighten as if the weight of his own ignorance was choking him. He had always told himself that his behavior wasn't malicious, that it was just part of the job, part of working in a world where class and race dictated how people were treated. But Claire had shattered that illusion. Across the room, Thomas, who had so eagerly defended the restaurant's elitism earlier, sat back down at his table. The restaurant's mood had shifted. He had seen the power of Claire's words, and the discomfort it had caused him wasn't lost on him. He was used to the kind of comfort that comes from wealth and status, but tonight, he felt small. He had witnessed Claire's courage and her conviction, and it made him feel uneasy in a way he couldn't explain. The next day, a wake-up call morning, Claire sat at her desk in her sleek downtown office, sipping coffee and reviewing documents. Her phone buzzed with notifications, but it wasn't just work messages. News outlets and social media platforms had caught wind of the incident at the Velvet Room. What had begun as a personal confrontation had turned into something much larger, a discussion about race, class, and inequality in the service industry. The viral post about Claire's stand was shared thousands of times, garnering attention from not only the public but also influential figures in business, politics, and social activism. Claire knew the power of her actions. She hadn't just embarrassed a server, she had made a statement. The backlash was inevitable, but so was the support. She had been waiting for the right moment to push for real change, to make sure her success wasn't just for herself but for a greater cause. Today was the beginning of that journey. Later that morning, she received an unexpected call. It was from Laura, the manager of the Velvet Room. Claire had been expecting an apology, but what she got was far more surprising. Laura, on the phone, her voice tense but respectful, "Ms. Johnson, I wanted to personally apologize for the way you were treated last night. It's not just Kevin who needs to learn a lesson, the entire staff does. We've decided to implement diversity and sensitivity training for everyone. I want to make things right, and I hope you'll allow us the opportunity to show you that we can change." Claire paused for a moment, her fingers tapping the edge of her desk. She wasn't surprised by the call, but the sincerity in Laura's voice caught her off guard. It was a step in the right direction, but Claire knew there was more work to be done. "Claire," calm but firm, "I'll take you up on that, Laura. But this is just the beginning. I'll be holding you accountable, and I expect real change, not just a band-aid solution. I've made it clear that this isn't a fight for me, it's for everyone who's ever been treated like they didn't matter." Over the next few weeks, Claire worked closely with Laura and the management of the Velvet Room to implement the necessary changes. Kevin, who had once harbored disdain for people like Claire, found himself re-evaluating everything he had been taught about privilege, race, and power. And slowly, very slowly, the restaurant began to change. The staff, too, were forced to reckon with their biases, as they learned about the damage caused by their actions. For Claire, the victory wasn't in the apology or the viral post. It was in knowing that she had started something bigger than herself. She wasn't just a successful businesswoman, she was a catalyst for change, proving that standing up for what's right can make a lasting difference. The story of The Special Guest isn't just about a confrontation between an accomplished guest and a racist server in a five-star restaurant. It's a powerful reminder about the importance of courage, resilience, and justice in a world still filled with inequality. Claire faced racial discrimination with unwavering confidence. Despite being treated poorly and looked down upon, she never allowed others' judgments to affect her self-worth. Her story demonstrates that when you believe in your value and refuse to tolerate injustice, you can make a difference, even in spaces that seem designed to exclude you. Even though the Velvet Room is portrayed as an exclusive, high-class restaurant, it still represents the deep-rooted biases in society. The staff's discriminatory treatment of Claire, simply because of her race and background, highlights how systemic discrimination persists even in seemingly progressive environments. The story urges us to question and challenge these unjust systems that separate people based on their race or social class. Claire's decision to speak up, no matter how uncomfortable the situation, ignited a change within the restaurant. By standing up for herself, she not only forced the staff to confront their prejudices but also began a conversation that spread beyond the restaurant walls. This shows that even one person's voice, standing against injustice, can have a ripple effect that leads to change. What do you think about Claire's actions in the story? Do you think one person can truly create change in a space that's built on inequality? Have you ever experienced or witnessed discrimination, and how did you handle it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your perspective in the comments below, and let's start a conversation about how we can all contribute to a more equal and respectful world.